Do you want to play one of the easiest, highest damaging builds in the game where you can simply mash a couple keys and watch this happen?
You have my sword.
Do you want to play a DPS build where you do not care what the rest of your team is doing because you are one of the most self-sufficient builds in the game? Do you want to play a build where you can customize it, provide all manner of useful utility to your team to carry them through even the hardest of content? Well, today your prayers have been answered. We are covering the majestic Power Soulbeast.
So it begins.
Welcome back, everyone. Power Soulbeast has been my go-to power damage build for the last few weeks, and I have been enjoying it to an astounding level. Here we have godlike levels of burst damage, so anything you find in open world is going to die exceptionally quickly. You are incredibly self-sufficient due to the baked-in boon extension that your build has, so you're always going to be having more boons than the rest of your team. You have the option to customize your build for some amazing utility. You've got group-wide Aegis, stability, damage reduction, boon extension, group-wide stun breaks, and outstanding levels of CC if you choose. So here you've got a DPS build that's going to put you at the top of the charts, all while still being able to carry your team through the hardest content. So buckle up, everyone, you're going to enjoy this one. First up, for the basics of Soulbeast. Here we've got an elite specialization of the Ranger class, and instead of having to rely on managing your pet like every other Ranger build does, here you can merge with your pet by entering Beast mode. So here your pet will give you extra attributes based on the type of pet that you have, and it will give you access to 3 new beast skills that are similar to your pet skills that you can activate at any time of your choosing. Soulbeast is basically a purely offensive elite spec, which rocks both great condition damage and power builds, and I have personally enjoyed playing Soulbeast for years since it launched with Path of Fire. Like every Ranger build, we first need to cover off on the pets that we need. Here you can actually be fairly flexible with the pets that you use. However, for Power Soulbeast, they at least need to be a ferocious pet, i.e. it will give you extra power and ferocity when you merge with them. This is going to be needed to crank your damage as much as possible, so make sure you pick this. Having a ferocious pet is also going to give you access to the Worldly Impact beast skill, which is going to be a key part of your damage rotation. Now in general, the Red Mower is going to give you the highest damage. On top of Worldly Impact, you're also going to get Harmonic Cry, which is a useful healing skill for yourself and nearby allies. But most importantly, we get Frenzied Attack, where you attack 5 times and inflict vulnerability. This skill is also going to be used to help upkeep the Fireworks relic buff that we're going to talk about in our build later on. Another fantastic pet for extra CC will be the Rock Gazelle. Here we've got Kick for a little bit of extra damage, but most importantly, we've got Charge, which is going to apply some damage and do some great Defiance bar damage. A very nice pet for open world in particular is going to be the Smoke Scale. So here you can take this for some extra CC and the Smoke Assault skill, which is basically unrelenting assault from the Revenant. Here your takedown skill is going to apply some knockdown, so some extra break bar damage, and your Smoke Assault is going to conceal you and make you lash out at nearby foes and gain extra might each time you strike an enemy. It is also an evade for some extra spice. Now you've got some extra choices to work with. As long as they are a ferocious pet, you're going to mostly be good to go. For our gear and food, it's very straightforward. Here we're going to take Berserker's gear in every slot. We're also going to be taking Rune of the Scholar for the extra power and ferocity. For our weapons, we're either going to take Sword, Axe and Hammer, or Axe, and Hammer, depending on your preference. And for our sigils, we're just going to be taking Sigil of Force and Sigil of Impact. Nice and simple. These sigils are going to give us the overall best strike damage modifiers for our power build, so it's a no-brainer. For our relic, we'll be taking a Relic of the Fireworks. So when we use a skill that has a recharge time of 20 seconds or more, you'll gain 7% extra strike damage for 6 seconds. This relic is also affected by your beast skills as well, so Worldly Impact will trigger it. Frenzied Attack will also trigger it as well. So we're also going to structure our damage rotation to try and keep up this buff as much as possible. For our food and utility, we'll have our best power and ferocity food, so your sous vide steaks, and superior sharpening stones. It's a very simple build to gear, and a great one for new players to start with because Berserker's gear is widely available. Now for our weapons. Sword Axe is going to be your default choice and will give you the highest overall damage. Your sword auto attack is simply going to apply some strike damage. Sword 2 will leap you towards your target, is a leap finisher, and grants you some vigor whenever you strike an enemy, and will deal more damage against disabled, defiant, or movement impaired foes for good measure. Sword 3 will cause you to leap towards your target and cripple them, and if your target is disabled, defiant, or movement impaired, you will immobilize them instead. Not only that, it's a leap finisher and an evade, so you can use this as an alternative to a dodge if you're out of endurance. Axe 4 will throw an axe at your target so that it returns to you, and it will strike foes on each way. It's a projectile finisher, will pull enemies towards you, so will apply some break bar damage as well. And because this applies CC, it is going to trigger our trait twice as vicious later, which is going to be a key part of our damage rotation. Axe 5 will spin your axes around you and attack nearby foes 12 times. This is one of your biggest damage skills. Make sure you don't interrupt this. It does have quite a long channel. It's also a whirl finisher, so you can get some extra combo finishes, and it will reflect projectiles as well. We've also got some vulnerability being applied for good measure. Now for an alternative main hand weapon, you can use axe instead of sword. It has slightly lower sustained damage, but does have a little bit higher burst damage. And it also doesn't have any of the extra force mobility of Sword 3 and 2, which can be very nice if you want to maintain control of your character as much as possible. I find the force movement from Sword 2 and 3 especially spicy on things like Bone Skinner, where I need to be able to move very freely. It's much easier to play, and you're free to dodge so much more often. The axe projectiles also bounce between enemies, so it's great for open world farming. Axe 1 will simply bounce your target between multiple foes, and you gain might for each enemy struck. Axe 2 will throw a spread of 5 whirling axes that will cause enemies to bleed. Does some great strike damage as well. Axe 3 will throw an axe which will chill enemies in the area around your foe, and your pet's next attack will inflict weakness. Personally, a lot of the time I'm going to be using axe over sword axe, but really this is just a matter of personal preference. The extra mobility from sword can be very nice if you're wanting to stick to your target as much as possible. Now, hammer is the new toy from the Weapon Master update and used to only be able to be used by Untamed, another Ranger Elite specialization. So here you can right click on your skills to toggle between your Unleashed Ranger and Unleashed Pet versions of your hammer skills. This gives us great flexibility in terms of whether we want our skills to do more damage or more CC. You want your skill bar to look like this, where you have the Unleashed version of Hammer 2, Hammer 4, and Hammer 5. Effectively, unleash all your hammer skills except Hammer 3, which we'll be using for CC to trigger the trait twice as vicious. And here you get amazing sustain damage as well as excellent burst damage. Your hammer auto attack will simply do some strike damage. Unleashed Hammer 2 will strike nearby enemies, deal damage, and will deal more damage to disabled or defiant enemies. Hammer 3 will quickly strike the ground in front of you, which will daze nearby enemies, and if it attacks an enemy, will follow up with another leaping strike that dazes enemies again. And for good measure, if you strike an enemy that is using a skill, you will gain Barrier. This skill gives Soulbeast access to huge levels of CC. Unleashed Hammer 4 will smash the ground in front of you and create 3 shockwaves that deal damage. And again, this will deal increased damage to disabled enemies, defiant enemies, and enemies with conditions. So a lot of our skills here are going to really benefit from attacking disabled enemies. So CC skills are a key part of your damage rotation. Remember that this build basically functions around them. Unleashed Hammer 5 will cause you to leap towards your target and slam the ground with your hammer and gain might and fury for each target struck. It's also a blast finisher, so you can use this to get some extra benefits from all your various combo fields. On certain encounters, if you do want to just have the regular Hammer 5, you can. It will give you some extra knockdown as well as still being a blast finisher. So here you're just making the trade between extra damage for the Unleashed version and extra CC with the non-Unleashed version. Next up, we've got our utility skills. For our heal skill, our default will be we heal as 1. So here you'll heal yourself and your pet, and you'll gain copies of each other's boons. Now the way this works with Soulbeast is that when you merge with your pet, any of the benefits that would apply to your pet, or any effects for that matter, instead apply to you. So here, this will extend the duration of any boons that you have applied to you. So this is a great way to extend your quickness and alacrity, which was really going to help your overall damage, and just make sure you have outstanding boon uptime, which will just eclipse the rest of your team. If you ever have a bit of downtime in your rotation, just feel free to use this skill, just for this boon extension. Next up, we have Frost Trap, which will set a trap and chill foes. It's going to deal 5 hits of big spike damage. and is also going to be an ice combo field. A side note though, I do find this skill quite easy to interrupt if you queue up other skills too quickly, so you're just going to have to make sure you are very careful about that. Sick'em will naturally cause your pet to rush at your foe, revealing them, and deal increased damage. So for us, when we're merged, it's going to cause us to do 25% extra damage for 10 seconds, and cause us to move 40% faster. A lot of your Soulbeast rotation is going to be involved around queuing up your high damage burst skills while you are under this effect of Sick'em, because we want to stack as many damage modifiers as possible, so make sure you time your good skills so you use them when you're under the effects of Sick'em. Signet of the Wild is mainly just here for the passive effect, which will increase the ferocity for you and your pet. If you do need to activate it, you can use it to immobilize enemies around you. However, you're very rarely going to be doing this. One wolf pack is going to grant you a buff that when you strike a foe, they'll be struck again a second later for an extra packet of damage. This effect lasts for 6 seconds and it's just an extra source of burst damage. So for some alternative skills, you can swap Frost Trap and Signet of the Wild for Dolyak Stance, which will remove conditions like Immobilized, Chill, and Crippled, anything that slows you down, apply damage reduction, and grant stability. Not only that, there's also a stun break. Mower Stance will grant you boons and increase the duration of any boons that you grant while you're in this stance. So again, we have another form of boon extension here. And when you pair these skills with the trait Leader of the Pack in the Groundmaster slot of the Soulbeast trait line, these stance skills will have an increased duration and will also grant their effects to nearby allies. So this is a huge amount of support that you can grant your team for very little downside. You can swap your heal skill to Healing Spring or Bear Stance with Leader of the Pack for group-wide condition cleanse. You can also run Stone Spirit, which will be some group-wide Aegis on a very short cooldown, which is exceptional value. You can also run Protect Me for group-wide stun breaks, which is incredibly useful on raid fights like Slothazor and Samurog. However, make sure you don't swap out Sick'em. This is a key part of your rotation, and if you're missing this, you're going to miss a huge chunk of your burst damage. Now it's time for our traits. Again, because we are a power damage build, we're going to be focused on cranking all our damage modifiers as much as we can. In skirmishing, the main focus of this trait line is to increase your critical chance and critical damage. Sharpened Edges will cause you and your pet to have a chance to inflict bleeding on critical hits. There's not that many other fantastic choices here, so this just gives us some extra damage. Strider's Strength will cause you and your pet to gain power and give you extra power when you're wielding a sword. And also when you evade attack, you'll also be granted some might. The extra power you get while wielding a sword does cause the sword version of this build to pull a little bit ahead in terms of damage. It's not game breaking though. Vicious Quarry is going to cause your Fury to grant ferocity and increase critical strike chance. So it's just going to give you better Fury overall. So here you're getting an extra 15% critical chance on top of what Fury already does, and you're getting 250 extra ferocity. And also, when you're struck below the health threshold of 75%, you'll gain Fury, so Fury uptime is not going to be a problem for you. The Beast Mastery trait line is all about buffing your pet, but when you enter Beast Mode and merge with your pet, any of these effects will apply to you as well. Resounding Timber is going to cause your commands to apply additional boons around you. Natural Healing is going to cause your pet to recover health every few seconds, which is going to apply to you when you merge with your pet. So this is some extra survivability, which is very nice. Pet's Prowess is going to grant your pet some extra ferocity, as well as cause it to move 30% faster, and when you merge with it, you inherit these changes. Honed Axes is going to grant you and your pet extra ferocity, and your axe skills will gain reduced recharge. You also get extra ferocity whenever you are wielding an axe. The Soulbeast trait line is obviously required, and it's going to be loaded with damage modifiers and boon extension. Live Fast will grant you Fury and Quickness whenever you use a beast ability. Essence of Speed will make it so that whenever you gain Quickness, it will increase the duration of other boons that affect you, which is going to be incredible for making sure that you, as a power Soulbeast, are flush with boons. Twice as Vicious is very important for Soulbeast. It's going to grant you 10% extra damage for 10 seconds whenever you disable an enemy. So we're going to want to make sure that we are disabling enemies at least every 10 seconds to upkeep this buff as much as possible. Oppressive Superiority will cause you to deal increased strike damage to foes at a lower health percentage than you. So as long as you are at a high level of health, this is just a free 10% damage modifier. You also get a condition duration bonus, but that's not really relevant for you as a power build. An alternative trait you can pick for extra group support is Leader of the Pack. As we mentioned before, this will cause your stance skills to gain an increased duration on you, and it will grant their effects to allies for reduced duration. This is very useful on fights with very short burst phases on things like fractals, because here then you can have one wolf pack, which is a great burst damage skill for you. You can take that, apply it to your team as well. So on fights with short DPS phases, this can work out to be higher overall burst damage. This is also a very useful trait to take with things like Dolyak and Moa stance, so you can provide extra support to your team. Now it's time for our rotation. Our rotation for Soulbeast is all about maximizing our burst damage, and this is going to be built entirely around Sikkim. So we're going to want to use Sikkim, and then use all of our high damage burst skills as fast as possible. We'll then fill the rest of our time by using our good skills off cooldown, and then when Sikkim's off cooldown, we're going to go through and repeat the burst. You also want to keep the 10% damage buff up from twice as vicious as much as possible, so we're going to want to use Axe 4 and Hammer 3 for CC to trigger it. You also want to make sure all of your whirling axes land while you're under the effects of Sikkim. So with this in mind, let's get cracking. For our opener, we're first going to use Frost Trap, 1 Wolf Pack, Sikkim, Hammer 3 to proc twice as vicious, Worldly Impact, Hammer 4, Hammer 2, or Weapon Swap, use Sword 2, Axe 4, Sword 3, Axe 5, and then Sword 2. From here, we'll simply kill time until we can burst again. We're going to use 2 Sword auto attack chains, Sword 3, Frenzied Strike, Axe 4, Sword 2, Weapon Swap, Hammer 4, Hammer 2, 3 auto attack chains, Hammer 5, Hammer 2, 1 auto attack chain, Hammer 3, then 1 auto attack chain. It's then time to burst again. If it's off cooldown, use 1 Wolf Pack. This will be every other loop. Use Frost Trap, Worldly Impact, use Sikkim during the cast of Worldly Impact, Hammer 4, Hammer 2, Weapon Swap, Sword 2, Axe 4, Sword 3, Axe 5, and then Sword 2. Try and have all of these skills complete by the time Sikkim runs out. And like I mentioned before, if you don't like the force movement on Sword, you can swap out Sword for Axe for a tiny DPS loss. Personally, I like doing this, and the rotation functions basically exactly the same. Some other quick notes to help you understand and adapt the rotation. At a high level, our rotation is basically burst, wait, burst, wait, and then repeat. We'll be keeping up the Fireworks Relic buff and twice as vicious as much as possible by regularly CCing a target and by using our skills that have at least a 20-second cooldown. Use all your high damage and utility and weapon skills while under the effects of Sikkim. You'll then use high damage and skills while you're waiting for Sikkim and other utility skills to be available. After that, you'll then repeat your burst. And if you ever get lost in your rotation, just use your high damage skills until Sikkim is off cooldown, then start blasting. And that, everyone, is the majestic Power Soulbeast. Here we've got a build that is very simple to play, which is a huge preference of mine, has outstanding burst damage, the ability to customize it to drastically help your team and carry them through the hardest content. It's durable, it's easy to gear, it's got great mobility, it is the Samwise Gamgee of DPS builds. Pick this build up, you will not be disappointed, and watch as you're sitting atop your throne on the DPS charts and watch everyone else bow before you. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what other builds you want me to cover. And if you want to chat about anything at all related to Power Soulbeast, come chat with us in our Discord as well. More than happy to answer any and all questions there. But with that, we'll catch you all next time. Cheers.